Understandest thou what thou readest in the King James Version? Some King James Version phrases really stick in the mind. I think they stick because of their beauty. One of my favorites, your favorites too, I bet. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Some stick in the mind because they just strike our modern ears as quaint, even funny. I think of the phrase superfluity of naughtiness that I think a lot of other people enjoy repeating like I do. And there's one other phrase, at least, that my wife and I sometimes use just because it makes us laugh from the King James. My wife will say something like, "Hey, honey, could you see who was out at my flower cart just now?" She sells flowers. This is Blackburn Gardens I'm coming live from, sort of live. Then I'll respond, "Oh, certain lewd fellows of the baser sort were at your cart." This phrase, lewd fellows of the baser sort, of course, comes from Acts 17, when Paul and Silas were in Thessalonica. It says, "But the Jews which believed not, moved with envy, took unto them certain lewd fellows of the baser sort, and gathered a company, and set all the city on an uproar, and assaulted the house of Jason, and sought to bring them out to the people." That's Acts 17:5. Now, what does that mean? What do you think? Lewd fellows of the baser sort. What is a lewd fellow of the baser sort? I'm going to pause the video right now, and I'm going to go run a lap around Blackburn Gardens while you type your answer in the comments. If you've never ever taken me up on this offer to type out a comment, I'm begging you this time. If you've watched my False Friends videos, now's the time for you. What is a lewd fellow of the baser sort? All right, I'm back. Now, step one. This potential false friend was sent to me by a true friend of the channel, Caleb Richardson. It never occurred to me to look this particular phrase up, lewd fellows of the baser sort. I thought I knew what lewd meant. And I do in my English, but 1611 English was different than ours. Let's go through all of our steps. I've already noticed a possible false friend. That's step one. Now step two. Let's look up the Greek word. The Greek word here is just the bog standard word for evil. This is the only place in the King James New Testament in which this particular Greek word, the standard word for evil or wicked, is translated with the word lewd. Elsewhere, the King James translators almost always use the words evil or wicked. Here's an example. "A wicked and adulterous generation," this is Jesus, of course, "seeketh after a sign." The word wicked in that verse is translating the Greek word that we are examining in this video. "Resist not evil," Jesus says. The word evil is translating that same Greek word, the one that we're examining in this video. The most responsible Greek English lexicon, which is called BDAG for Bauer, Donker, Arndt, and Gingrich, the editors, defines the word this way: being morally or socially worthless, wicked, evil, bad, base, worthless, vicious, degenerate. That's the meaning of the Greek word. But now on to step three, because that's not what the word lewd means in our English. Here, for example, is the Merriam-Webster dictionary. They give this definition: sexually unchaste or licentious. They give these glosses: dissolute, lascivious. Here's the New Oxford American Dictionary, my favorite: crude and offensive in a sexual way. She began to gyrate to the music and sing a lewd song. That's their sample sentence. Wickedness and evil are a general category. There are many subcategories, kinds of evil, and lewdness names one of them: sexual sin, especially crude sexual sin. And the New Oxford American Dictionary absolutely nails it, in my opinion. This is the way I have heard the word lewd used my entire life. Something that is lewd, L-E-W-D, is not just sexually unchaste. It's unchaste in a crude, offensive way. Lewdness is a sexual word. The Greek word that's being translated in Acts 17:5, the one that we talked about a minute ago, it is not a sexual word. It is more general, including all kinds of evil. So why did the King James translators choose the word lewd in this one place, Acts 17:5? To translate this Greek word that just means evil or wicked? Let's go to step 4, because as often the Oxford English Dictionary has the answer. The OED, of course, records the current sense of the word, a sense that does go back a long time in English and therefore was available to the King James translators. They give lascivious, lecherous, also involving or relating to sexual activity. Then they say later, usually the word meant sexually explicit or offensive or crudely suggestive, obscene, indecent. That's exactly how I take the word to mean today. The OED comments that this is the only surviving sense for the word lewd. The other 5 senses that it lists from the history of English have all dropped out of the language. No one says lewd and means these other 5 senses anymore. Let's see if any of them fits Acts 17:5 and the phrase lewd fellows of a baser sort. First obsolete sense that I'll mention, here it is from the OED. Of a person not in holy orders, not clerical, lay. Well, that doesn't fit Acts 17:5. There's no way that the Jews of Thessalonica purposely set out to collect lay people of a baser sort that weren't clerics. That's not it. Second obsolete sense is especially of a person that is lacking in education or unlettered. Now, I suppose that could fit the context here in Acts 17:5 in the King James, but it doesn't fit the Greek word. It's not evil to be unlettered. Another obsolete sense is of a person or action, assertion, belief, etc. That is, lacking in judgment or wisdom, stupid, foolish, unskillful, bungling. No, that's not who you call when you want someone run out of town. They will mess it all up. That's not what lewd fellows of a baser sort means. So here's another obsolete sense. Common, ordinary, of low social status. Now, that fits the context, but it doesn't really fit the Greek word that I know the King James translators were translating here. It's not evil to be of low social status. So this is what we have left, the last obsolete sense that I will mention. Of a person, action, etc., that is, bad or wicked or unprincipled, good for nothing, worthless. Now that has just got to be it. That is the sense the King James translators were trying to use. It fits the context, it fits the Greek word, but it's an obsolete sense because there's nothing about sexual crudeness that's entailed in this sense. So let's be clear. In 1611, depending on the context, English speakers of the day could use the word lewd, L-E-W-D, to mean quite a number of different things. I listed them out for you. The Oxford English Dictionary does. The OED suggests that the layperson sense actually was not in use anymore at that time. One of the things that the word could be used to mean at the time that the King James translators were working in their version of English was exactly what the Greek word means and what the context in Acts 17:5 calls for. But today, in our English, the word lewd has only one sense, and that sense is a sexual sense, crude, offensive, usually sexual talk or behavior. Lewd fellows of the baser sort. In that phrase, we today, in our English, necessarily hear a component of meaning that was not in the Greek and was not in the minds of the King James Version translators. We today misunderstand what their intent was, and we do so without realizing. I know I did until literally 1 hour ago when Caleb Richardson sent this to me. There are other uses of the word lewdness in the Old Testament especially that I didn't discuss in this video. I think many or most of them probably do contain that sexual component of meaning. Again, I'm not saying that the word lewd could not have that component back in 1611. So here's an example from the blistering condemnation of Israel that you find in the prophet Ezekiel. Thou calledst to remembrance the lewdness of thy youth, there's our word, in bruising thy teats by the Egyptians for the paps of thy youth. That comes from Ezekiel 23:21 in the King James. The ESV that I've got here still uses the word lewdness there in that passage in Ezekiel 23 because that sexual component of meaning absolutely belongs there. Thus you longed for the lewdness of your youth. This is the ESV. When the Egyptians, and now the English gets a little easier for us, handled your bosom and pressed your young breasts. Again, that's Ezekiel 23:21 in the ESV. Hosea 2:10 is similar in the King James and in the ESV. They both have the Lord saying the same thing with the very same word, lewdness. Just listen for it. I'll quote the ESV here. Now I will uncover her lewdness in the sight of her lovers, talking about Gomer, of course. Well, the King James actually uses the word discover her lewdness, which is another false friend, discover is. It meant uncover, but that's for another day and another dollar. I think there's probably one other place in the King James Version where the word lewd is a false friend. It's in the book of Acts again. It's in Acts 18:14. When Paul was now about to open his mouth, here's the King James, Gallio said unto the Jews, and now they quote him, if it were a matter of wrong or wicked lewdness, O ye Jews, reason would that I should bear with you. In other words, I would listen to you if you were making very serious charges against Paul. The Greek word being translated there, translated lewdness, also has no note of sexual sin. It's just a word meaning serious crime or villainous crime. And that is indeed how modern versions typically translate this Greek word when they're translating into our English. If you read the King James Version exclusively, and if you don't have the conceptual tools that I offer through my 50 False Friends series, you will misunderstand just a little the intent of the Spirit in 2 passages in Acts. You will add meaning that he did not intend. But here's the thing. I have all the conceptual tools that I'm offering you. Of course I do. I have Bible study tools out the kazoo. And I still missed it here in this phrase, lewd fellows of a baser sort, because it is so hard to make yourself remember to doubt your intuitive understanding of words that you know, that you've known for years. Sometimes people praise me and sometimes people condemn me for using difficult words on this channel. And I am kind of guilty of that sometimes. I try to explain them. I don't mind saying that I have one of the top 5 largest vocabularies in my household. I knew the word lewd in Acts 17:5. But I only know what it means in my English. I don't know what it means in other people's Englishes. Now, hopefully, however, thou understandest what thou readest in the King James Version a little better.